April 2016. Iceland's prime minister reads the morning headline with his name in it. His offshore company, $4 million hidden from taxpayers, just went public. By noon, 20,000 protesters packed the streets outside his office. By sunset, 50,000 eggs splatter his windows. Within 72 hours, he resigns in disgrace. But he's just the first. Britain's prime minister is now explaining his family's offshore fortune on live TV. Putin's closest ally is connected to $2 billion in suspicious transactions. In Beijing, censors work overtime. Relatives of 8 top Communist Party leaders just got exposed with offshore millions. Across the planet, the rich and powerful are in full panic mode. The weapon? 11.5 million leaked files from a Panamanian law firm nobody had heard of, sent by an anonymous source who messaged a German reporter at 12:47 a.m. with 3 words. Interested in data? One leak just declared war on every corrupt leader on Earth. Who risked death to send those files? How many more governments will collapse? The first sample arrives at 3:14 a.m. 47 files with passport scans, client spreadsheets, and internal emails stamped with Mossack Fonseca letterhead. Obermeyer clicks one at random, a wire transfer authorization routing $830,000 from Luxembourg to Hong Kong through a British Virgin Islands shell. He opens another, a photocopy of a Ukrainian oligarch's power of attorney. Then a third, instructions to backdate incorporation papers for a company owned by someone whose name he recognizes from corruption headlines. Every file confirms what John Doe promised. Mossack Fonseca isn't selling legal services, they're selling invisibility. By dawn, 2.3 gigabytes have been downloaded. By Monday, 94 gigabytes. By March 18th, the counter reads 1.8 terabytes and the deluge doesn't stop. Obermeyer's hard drive chokes. He requisitions secure servers from his newspaper, Süddeutsche Zeitung, and watches the number climb. 2.0 terabytes, 2.4, 2.6, until reaching the end, with a final count of 11.5 million documents spanning from 1977 to 2015, 40 years of offshore deals, hidden owners, phantom directors. The Panama Papers will soon dwarf WikiLeaks' entire archive by a factor of 8. Obermeyer scrolls through a client list. 12,000 shell companies registered in a single year. Nominee directors in Samoa signing papers for corporations they've never heard of. Bank accounts opened in Geneva, closed in Singapore, reopened in the Seychelles. Emails discussing discrete services and absolute confidentiality. One internal memo from a Mossack partner reads, "We cannot continue to put our necks on the line for someone who is obviously a crook, but the firm processed the transaction anyway." Obermeyer leans back. No single reporter can verify this. No single newspaper can fact-check 12 million files. He needs an army. But assembling one means trusting dozens of strangers with material that could assassinate presidents. And if one leaks, the entire investigation collapses. If someone talks, powerful targets will bury the evidence before publication. And John Doe's warning loops in his mind, "My life is in danger." He drafts an encrypted email to Marina Walker, director of the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists in Washington. He communicates having 2.6 terabytes that he needs to put on her network. But what kind of person risks death to expose strangers? And what will authorities find when they finally trace the money hidden inside those 11.5 million files? Within 70 hours, Walker has assembled the largest cross-border journalism collaboration ever attempted. By April 3rd, 376 reporters from 76 countries have signed non-disclosure agreements and joined encrypted chat rooms. German data scientists, Icelandic investigative teams, and Swiss financial analysts. A single rule governs them all. No one outside this group learns anything until publication. No editors, no spouses, and no government contacts. The risk of premature exposure is existential. If a single name leaks to a politician with enough clout, subpoenas could freeze the servers. Lawsuits could halt printing presses. Or even worse, targets might destroy evidence. The consortium operates like a covert cell. Communications use PGP encryption. Databases sit behind firewalls that log every access attempt. When discussing Vladimir Putin's network, Team members avoid writing his name in emails. They use Subject 14 instead. Russian state hackers have breached newsrooms before, so the team isn't paranoid. They're realistic. The data arrives on secure servers in waves. 11.5 million files don't come with an index. There's no search bar, no table of contents, just raw chaos. Emails in Spanish, ledgers in German, incorporation papers in Mandarin. PDFs nest inside PDFs. Some documents are handwritten. Others are photocopies of photocopies, text barely legible. Mar Cabra, the ICIJ's data editor, assigns analysts to build a searchable engine from scratch. They write algorithms to parse names from unstructured text, cross-match signatures with public databases, flag transactions above certain thresholds. One script runs overnight and returns 42,000 entities linked to politically exposed persons. By morning, reporters wake to notifications. There has been a possible match. A former Argentine minister and the Icelandic PM's wife appears in the client roster. Patterns emerge. Shell companies don't exist in isolation. They form chains. Company A owns Company B, which owns Company C, registered in 3 different tax havens. Tracing ownership requires following threads across continents. A reporter in London finds a British Virgin Islands shell tied to a Panamanian trust, controlled by a Seychelles foundation, whose beneficiary is a sitting African head of state. The path took 6 hours to map. Multiply that by thousands of clients. The workload is staggering. Teams divide by region. Latin America experts tackle accounts linked to Mexican cartels. Russian specialists chase flows connected to Putin's inner circle. Chinese-language journalists decrypt emails naming relatives of Communist Party leaders. Then the bombshells arrive. A researcher flags an email chain discussing $2 billion funneled through offshore accounts registered to Sergei Roldugin, a cellist and Putin's oldest friend. Putin doesn't appear in the files directly, but the network around him is undeniable. Another team uncovers shell companies controlled by family members of Xi Jinping and 7 other members of China's Politburo Standing Committee. Syria's Bashar al-Assad's cousins own property through British Virgin Islands entities. Emails reveal a company bankrolling Hamas weapons purchases. The consortium discovers 12 current or former heads of state, 143 politicians, and connections to 29 individuals on Forbes' billionaire list. The offshore economy isn't just big. It's the parallel infrastructure of global power. Verification consumes months. You can't publish that a prime minister owns a secret shell without proof that would hold up in court. For every claim, reporters pull incorporation records from registries, match signatures against government documents, confirm bank transfers via leaked SWIFT codes. A team investigating Icelandic Prime Minister Sigmundur David Gunnlaugsson spends 3 weeks cross-referencing his wife's company against failed Icelandic bank creditor lists. And they find the smoking gun. His household-owned claims worth millions against banks he was supposed to regulate. An undisclosed conflict of interest severe enough to topple a government. By January 2016, after 11 months of grinding analysis, the consortium had compiled dossiers on 600 investigations. Each country's media partner prepares localized stories. Der Spiegel will expose German bankers. The Guardian will reveal British tax evaders. Le Monde will uncover French corruption. Every outlet holds fire until April 3rd. Simultaneous publication eliminates the risk of one government pressuring another to suppress the story. But as the launch date approaches, an unspoken fear circulates through the team's encrypted chats. What if the public doesn't care? Offshore finance is abstract. Shell companies sound technical, boring. The journalists have risked careers for a story that might land with a thud. Or worse, what if powerful interests launch lawsuits so fast that the truth gets buried in litigation before anyone reads it? Late-night messages flash across screens. Are we ready? Did we miss anything? Will this actually matter? No one has an answer. They only know that in 72 hours, secrecy dies. How do you hide $2 billion without anyone noticing? And what happens when the person you're hiding it for controls a nuclear arsenal? Mossack Fonseca mastered one skill: making money vanish on paper. The recipe is deceptively simple. The first step is register a corporation in a jurisdiction with zero corporate tax and strict secrecy laws, Seychelles, British Virgin Islands, Panama, or other places. Then install a nominee director, a local who signs incorporation papers for a fee, but has no real control. After that, open a bank account under the shell's name, then move assets through it. Congratulations, the money's origin is now obscured, and the true owner is invisible. Mossack Fonseca industrialized this process. Between 1977 and 2015, they created more than 240,000 shell entities. At their peak, they were churning out 1,400 new companies per week. If you're running a multinational and need a tax-efficient holding structure, that's legal. If you're stashing assets offshore for estate planning in a dangerous country, that's defensible. But the Panama Papers reveal how the same tools facilitate crimes at industrial scale. Internal emails show Mossack staff helping clients evade sanctions. One exchange discusses opening accounts for Syrian weapons dealers after Western banks froze their assets. Another details backdating incorporation documents so a client can pretend a shell existed years before it did, useful for retroactively legitimizing suspicious transactions. A compliance officer raises alarms about a Mexican client linked to drug cartels, but senior partners overrule him. The firm processed 214,000 offshore entities for clients in over 200 countries. Among those clients, 43 individuals sanctioned by the U.S. for financing terrorism, corruption, or organized crime. Journalists verify every accusation they plan to publish. A claim that a politician owns a shell requires evidence tying them to it: signatures, bank statements, witness testimony. When reporters find David Cameron's late father listed as a director of Blairmore Holdings, a Bahamas-registered fund, they pull incorporation records from Nassau's registry, match his handwriting against known samples, and cross-reference transfer dates with UK tax filings. And the trail confirms it. Cameron's family invested through offshore structures designed to avoid British taxes. For a prime minister championing austerity, the optics are catastrophic. In February 2016, the consortium reaches out for comment. Emails go to Mossack Fonseca, implicated politicians, corporate clients. Most ignore the inquiries. Some issue terse denials. Mossack's co-founder Ramon Fonseca responds with indignation. Your allegations are based on stolen documents. We have broken no laws. Our clients are confidential, and we intend to keep it that way. The firm's official statement accuses journalists of launching a media witch hunt against legitimate business. Behind the scenes, chaos erupts. Fonseca abruptly resigns from a Panamanian government advisory post on February 28th, 10 days before the first story publishes. Employees begin quietly deleting emails. Clients bombard the firm's phone lines demanding to know if their names are in the leak. One conversation, later obtained by investigators, captures a Mossack lawyer telling a panicked client, "If your name is out there, it's too late." The files are everywhere now. The night before publication, 376 journalists across 76 countries double-check their URLs, verify that paywalls won't block stories, and queue uploads for simultaneous release at 2000 hours UTC on April 3rd. In Munich, Obermeyer stares at his screen, finger hovering over the publish button. In Washington, Marina Walker refreshes the consortium's internal chat, watching time zones tick toward midnight. In Reykjavik, a reporter rehearses the questions he'll shout at Gunn Laugsen when the Prime Minister emerges from his residence. At 2000 UTC, the button gets pressed, and the internet explodes. But what happens when 50,000 furious Icelanders learn their Prime Minister lied about his fortune? And which world leader will fall first? April 3rd, 2016, 8 p.m. UTC. 109 media outlets publish in unison. Within 90 seconds, Panama Papers becomes the top trend on Twitter in 43 countries. The consortium's website, which allows users to search 240,000 offshore entities, crashes under the traffic. 12 million page views flood the servers in the first hour. Phones at Mossack Fonseca's headquarters ring unanswered. Staff has fled the building. By 9:13 p.m., Reuters confirms that Iceland's opposition parties have called an emergency session of parliament to demand Prime Minister Gunn Laugsen's resignation. Reykjavik erupts. By midnight, protesters pack Oosterwolde Square outside the Parliament building. The crowd swells to 22,000, nearly 7% of Iceland's entire population. They bang pots, hurl eggs, chant out, out, out. Gunnlaugson's offshore company, Wintris Inc., held $4.2 million in claims against Iceland's collapsed banks he was elected to hold accountable after the 2008 financial crisis. He never disclosed it. When a reporter confronted him on camera 3 weeks earlier, he ripped off his microphone and stormed out mid-interview. The footage has been viewed 1.3 million times. Now, facing the largest demonstration in Iceland's history, Gunnlaugsson requests a meeting with the president. By April 5th, he's gone, the first head of government toppled by the papers. The crowd outside Parliament erupts in celebration, but who will be the next one? The casualties multiply. In Britain, David Cameron spends 4 days dodging questions about his father's offshore fund before admitting he personally profited from it, selling his stake for £31,500 just months before becoming Prime Minister. His approval rating drops 11 points in 72 hours. In Spain, Industry Minister José Manuel Soria resigns on April 15th after the papers expose his directorship of Bahamas registered companies. Pakistan's Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif faces immediate calls for his removal when leaks reveal his children own London properties worth millions through offshore shells. Opposition parties file corruption petitions that will, 14 months later, lead to his disqualification by the Supreme Court. Moscow's response is predictable. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov calls the revelations a CIA-backed information attack designed to destabilize Russia before elections. State media ignores the substance, $2 billion in transactions linked to Putin's inner circle, and focuses on attacking the journalists. Independent Russian outlets that cover the story receive threatening calls. Meanwhile, Beijing deploys its Great Firewall. Within hours of publication, censors scrub every mention of Panama Papers from Weibo, WeChat, and Baidu. Searches for the phrase return 0 results. News sites that published stories see pages go blank. The censorship confirms what the leak suggested. Relatives of at least 8 current or former members of China's Politburo Standing Committee control offshore assets worth hundreds of millions. Tax authorities mobilize. France's finance ministry announces April 5th that it will investigate every French national in the database. Germany's federal tax office forms a task force within 72 hours. Australia's tax commissioner declares the agency will pursue aggressive action against evaders. The U.S. Internal Revenue Service, Justice Department, and FBI launch a joint probe. By April 8th, at least 30 countries have initiated criminal or tax investigations. Banks scramble to distance themselves from scandal. HSBC, Credit Suisse, and UBS all issue statements claiming they've severed ties with suspicious clients. Whether that's true or public relations damage control remains unclear. The European Commission accelerates proposals that had languished for years. On April 12th, officials unveil plans to force multinationals to disclose profits and taxes paid in every country they operate. The Panama Papers made the case for us, one EU spokesperson tells reporters. In Washington, Senator Sheldon Whitehouse revives the Incorporation Transparency and Law Enforcement Assistance Act, a bill requiring disclosure of shell company owners that had stalled in committee for 3 years. Suddenly, it has bipartisan support. The political calculus has shifted. Defending offshore secrecy is now toxic. At Mossack Fonseca's glass tower in Panama City, organized crime police arrive on April 12th with a warrant. Officers in tactical gear surround the building. They seize computers, hard drives, and 27 boxes of documents. Branch offices in Lima and San Salvador face simultaneous raids. Jürgen Mossack and Ramon Fonseca release a statement calling the operation a violation of attorney-client privilege. Panamanian prosecutors ignore them. By evening, forensic accountants are sifting through the firm's servers, hunting for evidence of money laundering, tax fraud, and sanctions violations. The law firm that spent decades helping clients hide in the shadows is now front-page news in 137 countries. The offshore industry's curtain has been ripped down. What was invisible is now undeniable. But exposing the system is one thing. Dismantling it is another. Will governments actually act, or will outrage fade into inertia while the wealthy find new havens to hide? By December 2021, 84 countries had opened 1,369 investigations tied to the Panama Papers. Tax agencies in Germany, Spain, the UK, and Australia reported recovering $1.36 billion in unpaid taxes, fines, and penalties, money that would have stayed in Cayman Islands accounts if not for the leak. Prosecutions followed. In Guatemala, a judge sentenced a former energy minister to 15 years for laundering bribes through Mossack-created shells. South Korea jailed a shipping magnate for hiding assets offshore to dodge inheritance taxes. In France, 13 individuals faced fraud charges after investigators traced their offshore companies back to unreported income. The policy changes mattered more than individual convictions. Before 2016, proposals to expose shell company owners gathered dust in legislative committees. After April 3rd, political will materialized. The United Kingdom launched a public beneficial ownership registry in 2016, the first G7 nation to force transparency. By 2018, all 28 EU member states had implemented directives requiring disclosure of true owners behind corporate facades. The Cayman Islands, Bermuda, and British Virgin Islands, three jurisdictions that housed 60% of Mossack Fonseca's shells, agreed under international pressure to share ownership data with law enforcement. Tax havens didn't vanish, but their secrecy walls cracked. In the United States, resistance finally broke. For decades, states like Delaware and Nevada had profited from allowing anonymous shell companies. Delaware alone incorporated more entities than Panama and required less disclosure. The Panama Papers embarrassed Congress into action. On January 1st, 2021, the Corporate Transparency Act became law, mandating that shell companies report beneficial owners to the Treasury's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. It wasn't a public registry, but it marked the most significant anti-money laundering reform since the Patriot Act. Without the Panama Papers, one Senate staffer admitted, this bill dies in committee. Voluntary disclosures spiked. In the leak's first year, offshore tax amnesties in Belgium, Argentina, and Italy saw filings jump by 40% as individuals raced to settle debts before being exposed. The papers shifted the cost-benefit calculation. Hiding assets offshore had always carried risk, but that risk felt abstract. Now it had names, faces, and prison sentences attached. Mossack Fonseca didn't survive. Clients abandoned the firm in droves. Revenue collapsed. By March 2018, the founders announced closure, citing irreversible reputational damage and economic deterioration. In a final statement, they maintained innocence, blaming a campaign of defamation by an alliance of NGOs and media. Panamanian courts later acquitted Mossack and Fonseca of money laundering charges on procedural technicalities. But by then, the firm existed only as a Wikipedia entry and a cautionary tale. Its demise didn't kill the offshore industry. It simply redistributed the business to competitors in Dubai, Singapore, and South Dakota. Because the Hydra didn't die. The Paradise Papers leaked in 2017, exposing new schemes in Bermuda and the Cayman Islands. The Pandora Papers followed in 2021, revealing that elites had simply migrated to trusts in South Dakota and real estate in Dubai. Some havens doubled down. The Seychelles passed laws strengthening corporate secrecy after the Panama fallout. EU courts struck down parts of public ownership registries on privacy grounds in 2023, reopening loopholes. The cat-and-mouse game continues. Regulators close one door, wealth managers find another. But something irreversible shifted. The Panama Papers gave offshore finance a face. Politicians couldn't dismiss it as theoretical anymore. Citizens saw their leaders' names in the database. The leak inspired 11 countries to increase funding for financial crime units. It emboldened whistleblowers. At least 3 major leaks since 2016 cite the Panama Papers as motivation. Journalism schools now teach the investigation as a case study in cross-border collaboration. Netflix released a documentary. Steven Soderbergh directed a feature film. The phrase Panama Papers became shorthand for elite corruption. In May 2016, John Doe published a manifesto explaining their motive. "Income inequality is one of the defining issues of our time," they wrote. "The system is rigged. Shell companies enable crime and corruption. I decided to expose it. They never asked for money, never sought fame, never revealed their identity. Few years later, their anonymity remains intact. Speculation swirls. Was it a Mossack employee? A hacker collective? A state intelligence agency? No one knows. What's certain is that one person with access to the right server changed global policy. If one leak exposed this much, imagine what still sits encrypted on servers around the world, waiting for the next John Doe to press send.